Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Library Talk and Everything Else. I'm your host, DJ JC. Today is Thursday, September 18th, and I am so happy that you are allowing us to be part of your Thursday morning. I'm really excited because today I have a guest in the studio, Mr. John Ferris. Good morning, John.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for being here. John is a research and instruction librarian from the University of Texas Rio Grande Valley Library. He's one of my colleagues, one of my friends, and we often find ourselves having so many different conversations. But one of the conversations that seems to we go back to and something that binds us is music. So today we're going to be talking about music. So everybody, please think about your favorite musician, your favorite songs as we discuss music. We're going to go into some 80s music. John and I are both products of the 80s. So we're going to look at some 80s music throughout the show. And honestly, I'm so excited that you're here with us. You're listening to Library Talk and Everything Else only on Vaquero Radio, the Valley's student station. Good morning, everybody. Again, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Library Talk and Everything Else, only on Vaquero Radio, your Valley's student station. We were listening to Michael Jackson, and we were talking off the air, John and I, about Michael Jackson and the Thriller album. John, can you give us a little more information about that before we actually introduce who you are? Because it was such a wonderful story that you were telling me about the Thriller album.
Of course, yeah. Well, Thriller was such a incredible watershed album. It is like the pinnacle of Michael Jackson's success. Of course, it sold like hotcakes. It was an awesome album, and the reason why I think, and James, he loved to talk about music too, just like with you. He says because he worked very closely with Quincy Jones.
Okay.
And Quincy Jones still is, to my mind, the most awesomest producer. He knew how to put all that talent together. And the reason why that Thriller was such a success, not only because of Michael Jackson and all his success, but also because he was able to gel and put all those talents together. And that's what made that thing so awesome. So, I mean, look at it. He brought in Paul McCartney. That was The Girl Is Mine. He brought in Eddie Van Halen to that huge guitar solo. I remember vividly James telling me, I said, man, I love that guitar solo and beat it, man. I said, yeah, cool. You know who that is? Who? He said, that's Eddie Van Halen, dude. Eddie Van Halen. They brought in Eddie Van Halen to do that solo. I said, no wonder that thing was so good. And so he brought all those talents together. And I'll tell you, another quick, it's kind of a Christian little note. Jerry Hay, I don't know if you want me starting something? And he says, Mama Sa, Mamaku Sa.
Yes, that's right.
As you may know, it's a very tight section. It's very, very put together. But that's why that horn section sounds good. The guy who did the arrangement was a guy named Jerry Hay. Oh, okay. And Jerry Hay mostly focuses on, or I think he still does, Christian music. But Quincy Jones brought him in and said, hey, would you mind help me with these arrangements, add it to the song here, Want to Be, and he's showing that Want to Be on a Star. And yeah, I'll add something in there. And he put those tight horn sections in. It just made it the sound that much more powerful. And boom, that again, that's why that album sold like hotcakes. My brother bought it the year that it came out was 1983, I believe. And it just sold like hotcakes. And according to what I remember the experts saying about it, it just then took a life of its own. I mean, we just get buying it like crazy. That's why he made so much money. That's why I think it was so successful.
It is one of the most successful albums of all time,
mm-hmm.
let alone Michael Jackson's album. And so, again, thank you so much. As we are going into the show, John and I was about to say that John and I are not experts in music, but apparently, John, you're kind of beating on that one. But John and I, as I mentioned before the break, and if you're just joining us for the first time, thank you so very much for being part of the show. Thank you, honestly. If you are a longtime supporter of the show, we truly appreciate your continuous support of what we do, and we do it for you. So thank you so much for allowing us to be part of your Thursday mornings. This is a research-based show for those of you that are tuning in for the first time. So we'll take a look at a research question, and then using the UTRGV Library's resources, plug. And John actually has an article with me, with him, that he did some research, and he's going to share that, again, obtained from the university resources. So the research question for today is, how does listening to different types of music impact an individual's emotional state, their memories, and their senses? And I mention that because at being part of the research because John and I, in our conversations, I am not by any stretch of the imagination a music expert. I like listening to music, certain music, certain types of music, and John and I have had these wonderful conversations
Hmm.
about tidbits like that about Michael Jackson's Thriller, and he's really knowledgeable when it comes to music with the Beatles
Hmm.
and other groups. And he was talking about his brother James, right, John? You were
Yeah, it
mentioning
was.
your
Yeah,
brother
very
James,
much so. It was very inspiring.
and he is really into music. And so what we're going to talk about today is how music makes us feel because again, not being
Hmm.
experts in the field of music history,
Hmm.
we wanted to discuss how certain songs, how certain type of music, and we're talking about music from the 80s, 90s, today, even theme songs from movies and from shows, those have this sense of nostalgia for us. It takes us back to a different time. So we want to talk about that. And through the course of this presentation, we have done our research and we're going to be taking a look at various points of what music does for us. It can bring up good times, it can bring up
Hmm.
terrible times, it can bring up wonderful memories. It appeals to our senses, it appeals to our nostalgia. And so that's what we're going to discuss today. And in looking at the research question, there are so many genres that we're going to cover. And again, we mentioned the 80s. And John, I did Michael Jackson's music for a certain reason because
Hmm.
you cannot get more 80s than Michael Jackson, I
Oh,
believe.
for sure,
Right?
totally. Yeah, you.
And I don't know for younger listeners if they really know the impact that Michael Jackson had in the 80s and what Michael Jackson meant to us in the 80s. And we were talking on the way to the studio,
Hmm.
right, John,
Of course.
about how I don't think there's ever going to be another Michael Jackson. He was
He was
talented.
just one. He was one in a million. He really was. He was a really talented from an early age, and I mean, from he was a little kid. I remember seeing him or little pieces of him. I've seen on YouTube also of when he was part of the Jackson Five and
Yes.
all of his brothers. And of course, I know the whole story about it too. But of course, we don't have time to cover it. But in terms of his talent, he was so talented from an early age. He was just so on spot on, even as a kid, and then as a grown up. I mean, to see him do that moonwalk. My
Yes.
God, all his performances and do that moonwalk. And they said he's a dancer too. Oh my God, that producer is incredible. Let him keep doing that. And I remember I'm joking with that Susan. I remember one time we were at the library one day and said, "Hey man, you ever think you could ever make your when you walk at the library, make the floor light up like he did in Billie Jean's?" And he would then. And do you think? I think I asked him. Do I ever do that to the Susan one day? One day, one day.
We can all dream,
We can
right?
all dream, yeah.
And so going
But
back to that, I do. We got so excited, John. I think in the conversation that I
mm,
neglected to mention who you are. I
you
mentioned
are.
John
Oh yeah.
Ferris. He's a research and instructional librarian. But please tell us a little bit more about your role here at the university, which is
Oh,
an important one.
yeah. Oh, it is very important. I really enjoyed very much being part of. I'm a research instructional librarian. I perform a lot of instruction sessions, which I've done this week for a lot of students and for instructors, and I share about the resource we have at the library. In fact, the resource that I've got here, the article that you're mentioning, referring to. And I'll plug it also because I think you were kind of compelling me to do it, but in a good way, in a good way, in a good way.
Because we want to
Because
showcase
we want to
the
showcase
resources
the
that the
resources
university
that we
library
have
has.
that
Yes.
and it's awesome. I mean, we have quite a few, and get into the name of it. How Music Moves Us. That's the name. It's from Neuroscience. That's the name of the publication. And the name is How Music Moves Us. Music-induced emotion influences motor learning.
Okay.
Okay. And not to get all of the details, because I mean, it's so much information. I was looking at it like, man, they covered so much. But I can say that the results of the research suggested that music induced emotion can influence both subcomponents of motor learning in a different way. Music induced pleasure may have improved motor components of sequence learning by means of increased straight-seal dopamine availability, whereas music-induced fear may facilitate the recruitment of attentional circuits, the attention in your mind. So, it can affect your mind and connect with your mind idea, nostalgia, a flight or fight response, a sad moment, a good moment. It has that effect. And it's really, and again, we found this here at the UGRGV library article, and It is. And it's like when I hear as a little kid, I don't know if you remember ABC's Wide World of Sports?
I remember that.
Remember that, and Jim McKay was the host, right? And he brought sports legends from all across the globe for it. But the theme, that's what get it. Think about the theme. When you first hear the theme, I bet if those of you remember it, it just brings right to me goosebumps right up your spine, like, oh my God. Dun, 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 dun,
This was
dun,
on
dun.
Saturdays, right? I
On
believe it
Saturday,
showed
yeah,
on Saturday
It was
afternoons.
on Saturday afternoons, and Cordell and James, he was, "Hey, you know what?" And I was talking about it with him too. What kind of music makes you feel like that? And he said, "Yeah, that ABC Wild World of Sports themes, man." Because I would hear it and like, bam, I was like, man, it would just goosebumps up my spine. It could create that induced feeling of excitement. And that's what they wanted to do, produce. Yeah, I want you to see all the sports, the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. The music dovetailed and complemented the whole thing. And it was only just about like a minute, but it just, boom, or it just, the emotion that you feel when they want to get, well, it's a combination of two things. They want to attract your attention and they want you to be excited about it too. And any kind of sports thing that I saw, I remember as a kid watching, Nadia Comaneci doing the Glenn Jones, and she would showcase her, or they would do Kathy Rigby, and like, oh my God, and they would do her song, and they would put, I think when they would do the promos, they put her picture, little snippets of the sports figures doing their thing, and so I said, wow, man, that's awesome, and that's kind of what we mean by the influencer motor learning, and it kind of releases those emotions, and it just kind of it triggers those great feelings that we have.
Exactly. And so in my research, I use that as a reference and research question, excuse me. How does listening to different types of music impact an individual's emotional state, their memories, and their senses? And you hit on that, the impact of that emotional state. Uplifting music, you hear, pop music, and you hear rock, and you hear hardcore metal, and it induces something to you. It boosts your dopamine release, and that's linked to pleasure and motivation, and you just get energized by
Yeah.
listening to powerful songs. And I know we may be referencing older songs.
Yeah.
I know we're going to be talking about AC/DC. We're talking about Metallica,
uh-huh.
and I know you younger audiences have your own groups that you like, and that are motivating you, and that you're listening to, and that give you the same type of feeling. They can improve your mood. You mentioned that earlier, especially in cases where you're depressed, and sometimes
Sure,
you
sure.
you find yourself in this state where you're sad and
Mm-hmm.
you are hurt, and songs can be uplifting, whether that's a religious song, whether that is
Sure.
a song that takes
Mm-hmm.
you back to a
That you
easier,
can connect
simpler
with to
time,
a
that you
simpler
connect.
time, and you
Exactly.
connect with it and ease and alleviate your feelings, emotion, whatever you went through, a breakup. It could have been a loss of a friend, and you can just go. For me, like I say, I don't know. I think you can share. You can share one if you want. Well, one that I remember was I remember going. I had a break with a girlfriend. I won't name names, but I remember going to Sonic and picking something, and then the feelings, my emotions just came out again. The recollection of the whole break, and I'm like feelings, and I'm thinking about that song by Jim Croce, Operator. I don't know if anybody remembers
I
him.
know that one. I
Anyone?
know that
And
song.
again, parts of the song that's what get to me the most, and I hear it, and where he's saying like, let's forget about this call, nobody there really wanted to talk to, and he wrote very plainly. If you know about Jim Croce, when he wrote songs, people resonated with him because he just wrote very simply. He was like he hung around those kind of people actually in his life to kind of, that's why let's forget nobody there really wanted to talk to. Thank you for your time. You've been so much fun and kind. You can keep the dime. Being very generous, being kind. And I would think about that, but the other part lyric would get like, well, that's the way that feeling goes. But let's forget all that. Just give me the number if you can find it. I'm all right in the show. I've overcome the blow. I've learned to take it well. I hope just wish my words could convince myself that it just wasn't real. But that's not the way it feels. And that part just like,
That's where it
that's
that's where
where
it
it
impacts you.
the impacts.
And you're right. And it seems like when you're going through this sad state, every song on the radio, every song that you
Yeah,
listen to
right.
seems to keep
You
triggering that
that
emotion.
yeah,
So
right.
it's
It
like,
comes like a
am I
connectivity and
listening to
another and
am
another
I
and
listening
another.
to the all sad station? I need to change the
And
radio
you have to switch. Yeah.
exactly, or what I'm listening to.
Mhm.
But this opposite end of that, John,
Mhm.
is this aggressive music. You know,
Mhm.
your heavy
Yeah.
metal.
Yes.
And you and I talked about Metallica. We talked about AC/DC, and we discussed how at least I, when I was in high school, some of my friends that were in football would listen to Metallica to
Mhm.
kind of pep them up before the games,
Wow.
before they went out there onto the field,
Mhm.
as they were traveling in the buses,
Yeah.
as
Mhm.
they were going to the games, they were listening to this hard rock, AC/DC,
Yeah. It's hardcore.
Metallica,
Mhm.
and just to get them in that mode, in that
Mhm.
mood of, hey, we're gonna go play football,
Mhm.
and we're gonna be aggressive, and we're gonna go out
Yeah.
there, and and again, for you younger audience members, you have your own groups that are influencing the way you think, the way you act, the way you're getting through difficult times, and you are enjoying today's music. And I am a semi fan of today's music. There's really not an artist that I would say, man, I really need to listen to that artist's new album or newest album. And there are bits and pieces of artists that I do like, Taylor Swift and
Mhm.
some other artists that my daughters introduced me to.
Mhm.
And so, or you just hear about and you kind of come across a song. But I like those old songs. I like listening
Mhm.
to 80s, 90s. I like to listen to Mexican music.
Okay.
And so that's what we wanted to talk about in today's show was how does music make you feel? Because it can take you from, like you said, that sad, depressed state to another where you find euphoria. You're happy
Mhm.
because that song just makes you so content and so
Mhm.
happy because it takes you back
Yeah.
to those times where you can look back and say, "Oh my goodness, life was simple,
Mhm.
life was easy," and and then it could take you again to motivate you to exercise.
Oh, right.
It can
Yes.
motivate
Mhm.
you
Certainly.
to and empower you to take on something because of a song or a theme or just music in general. There is some theme music, John, that I really like, and I know you
Mhm.
and I have talked
Yes,
about
we did.
television as well,
Yep.
and themes that got you motivated into watching the show.
Of
Okay, so I'm gonna
course.
ask you, and then I'll kind of share
Okay.
some of mine. What were some theme songs
Oh.
that just you listen to and it just gets you revved up
Oh,
into wanting to watch the show? What were
oh my
some?
gosh.
And
Well,
a lot of
there's
those were
so
happening in the '80s and
the
maybe
well, a
'90s.
lot were the '80s, and it depends on your mood of what struck you, what you're interested in. Of course, now if I go back to my junior high days when I was a preteen, there's probably only a couple that I could recall that really turned me on, and I said, "Yeah, I want to watch that show." It was, of course, Knight Rider.
Knight Rider, yes, I remember
Yeah,
that's in
David
that's in
Hasselhoff,
the
and that
'80s
was the
also.
'80s thing. Of course, was all digital synthesized, and it was all, and it was a cool theme, But I loved watching Knight Rider. I was a big fan of Hasselhoff, a big fan of. I even remember. I mean, this is how good my memory is. If anybody, all diehard fans out that love Knight Rider, you remember Goliath. You remember that? So the two-part episode with Goliath, where I think Hasselhoff played both parts. Knight Michael Knight and Garth Knight, and they both had some kind of a fight or something. And then I was in Las Vegas, and I remember all the details of the episode because too much to take too long to explain. But if you remember that, the theme is just iconic, and you knew you were going to have fun, and it gets you to watch the show, and it just
That's what it
entranced me.
did.
It did for
Shows
me.
like
Yeah.
Airwolf, shows
Airwolf
like
too.
A-Team, MacGyver.
A guy, or
Those
even
shows
Dallas or Falcon Crest.
exactly.
Those
That's
like
right.
drama. If you went to drama,
Dynasty and
sure.
you. It seemed like the people that were producing these shows knew exactly how to select the music. Also,
Absolutely.
uh, music for movies. You
Mhm.
know, you hear songs from the theme from Indiana Jones,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you know that Indiana Jones, Harrison Ford, is coming,
that's
and
right.
he's gonna go on an adventure.
He's the adventure. Yeah, that's right. What's called the Raiders March, the Raiders of the Lost Ark. And every time I hear it, man, I wanted to see that movie again because it was so good. That
And again,
movie.
it takes you
movie.
back to the 80s
Yeah,
because
it
that movie came
connects
out
you
early
to that
80s.
nostalgia, that time, and it brings
Right.
you back. And I think that for people in my generation, sure you too, you hear the song, that's exactly what the producers want. They want you to watch the movie, and you reconnect with it right away in your
The
mind.
theme from Superman by John Williams. I
Williams,
mean, and you see of the original one from 1970, from the 1970s. I hear that, and automatically I'm thinking Christopher Reeve. You know, I'm thinking he as Superman. And I know there's a new Superman movie that came out this summer, and the theme's similar to that one, but the original John Williams score of
Uh-huh.
Superman, the Superman theme, is just incredible.
Yep.
And again, it makes you want to go watch those original movies.
Of
So
course.
somebody, some production company, some producer, some director knew exactly what music to choose from. I was listening to a podcast
Mhm.
and they were discussing the movie Goodfellas. Have you ever watched the movie
Yeah,
Goodfellas?
many times.
That soundtrack to Goodfellas is perfect for
Yes,
that movie.
it is. It's perfectly crafted, dovetails it because what does it also do? Not only the music, most to me, it captures that era so beautifully, so perfectly, like and stuff that I never heard that I also collected too. I think I have it on my playlist in my truck. Is Stardust.
Oh, okay.
And if you know Stardust music, this is how music history connected. Thanks to my brother James, again the amateur musicologist in the family. Do you know that Stardust originally written by Hoagie Carmichael, and he was the original guy who wrote it in the. This goes back. I know this goes back along the 20s or the 30s, but it's come back many times, and it came back for that Goodfellas because many other artists recorded, and I think it was Billy and Vera and the Dominoes. And then they did their own recording of Stardust, and that's the one that we hear.
And that movie, if you've watched it, and if you haven't, I highly recommend. It's one of my favorite movies. And I talked about movies earlier in another episode last term. That movie goes through several decades, and they chose the perfect music throughout the decades of that was happening within that storyline. So props to Martin Scorsese and everybody that put that movie together. It is a masterclass in
Masterclass and soundtrack
directing and
select. They were
soundtracks.
Banish Boy, I know was in there too, and then Sunshine of Your Love from Cream. I mean, going to the '60s and like, oh my God, that is just so class. And I remember when they were the supergroups and they were at the top of the charts too, and it takes you back and you connect both with the music and with the characters too, what they're going through at the time.
And so we're gonna go into a music break, John, and I'm gonna play one theme song from a movie, and this is going to get you really pumped up. We're going to listen to Kenny Loggins' Danger Zone from the 1986 Top Gun movie, and it returned in Maverick not too long ago. So thank you so much again for being part of the show. We were really enjoying where the conversation has taken us and you being a part of it. You're listening to Library Talk and everything else only on Vaquero Radio, the Valley's student station. Highway to the Danger Zone by Kenny Loggins. That song introduces the movie Top Gun in such a way that you know that is going to be a fun, entertaining, action-packed movie.
For
right?
sure, totally.
And you and I have spoken about this before, that, and I think you shared this tidbit of information that military recruiting improved and went up. The numbers went up because this movie.
They did. A lot of people were inspired to join the military, particularly Air Force. I would say the Air Force, anything else, to fly and be Air Force. And my brother James actually did influence my dad, I should say, influenced him to go to the Air Force Academy. But it would so capture my dad's attention that I thought I was going to end up a Top Gun instructor myself. He was just so entranced
with this particular movie.
He was so, I should say, absorbed with it. I could say obsessed with it, and I guess that would be not too far from wrong. With pretty close to the truth, because everything was at that time. He had his own outfit that he designed, a pair of coveralls, and he had a cap that said Top Gun. He had a little badge that said Top Gun.
Your father.
Well, yeah, my dad did, and I think he did reconnaissance work through the Air Force. Although he was a Marine by trade, he did reconnaissance work for the Air Force. But more importantly, it was just all Top Gun. He just could not stop talking about that movie. Everything was the Need for Speed this and Talk to Me Goose that. He was just so
He was
caught up in the
always
movie,
quoting that.
quoting that duck with the lines and yeah, and you see how he buzzed the tower and all this stuff, and I'm like, oh my God! And we all we could afford was VCR back then, so he would basically record the movie, to the video shop, record the movie, and then he would just buy the movie, and then he would just listen to it all day, and then he would just quote the movie, and he would talk about the parts of the movie that he liked and parts he did, and just that's obsessed and caught up with it. And I guess in a side way, kind of, this was my brother James to be part of the Air Force Academy, which he did graduate from in 1996. So I mean, I've seen them in action. I've seen them fly there in Colorado Springs and so on. But it did influence a lot of people to join the military and influence them in positive directions.
And so we talk about that, the connection between a movie and music, and thank you for sharing that story about your family and their connection to both the military and to this song and the movie. And you hear themes, like we said, Star Wars, that grand opening in Star Wars that just captures that moment, and you want to relive that moment. You want to go back to those times. And I think that's what it is that nostalgia. And that can happen with anything. This idea of it doesn't always have to be songs that are on the radio. I mean, there are classical songs, classical music that also relaxes us, that takes us to a different place, that takes us to a wonderful moment. I am a big fan of Paco Bell's Canon.
Okay.
In D, I believe, right? That's the title of it. And I'll sometimes listen to that when I am riding my bike, or when I'm walking, or when I am just in this mood where I want to listen to that song. The Entertainer, I like to listen to that one. So yes, I may not be a fan of maybe or no popular music that's going on right now. Again, I mentioned that earlier, an occasional song here or there that I listen to, my daughters will kind of turn me on to. But I like the ability to be able to listen to wide range of music, from classical to European to like you said, synth pop, and all sorts of different genres. So it's great to just kind of expand our musical palette, I guess, as they say, right? And go in different directions and see what it is that you like, because we all have our favorite music.
Yes,
And one of my favorite parts of the show is when I get a chance to go out and talk to individuals and ask them, if it fits the show, what their take is on our topic. And today, for today's show, I had gone out and asked what your favorite musician was, and or favorite musical group, and the reason why. And we'll go into that in a little bit. And just time just goes by so fast when I have wonderful guests on the show and throughout. I wish I could have a little more time, but thank you so much again, John, for being here.
Thank you.
But going back to music, it's such a powerful cue for also, like you said earlier, our biography.
Yeah, our life.
Our lives, you're going through certain things in our lives, and maybe that song uplifted you, or maybe that song, like you mentioned earlier, and again, thank you also for sharing that when you were at Sonic, it brings you down,
Yeah, it does.
and those are, for older adults, they can go back to maybe Elvis and talk about, their experiences with them. And I want to share a story as you're sharing your story too. My father loves oldies music. He loves music from the past. And again, it takes him back to a different time. And I remember traveling a lot in the summers to San Antonio. And we'd be traveling, and as soon as we hit the area in San Antonio where the frequency would pick up stations from San Antonio, he had a favorite oldie station that he would listen to, and he would always turn it to that. And we knew, my brother and I in the back seat, we knew we had to quiet down because Dad was going to listen to his oldies music. And I think I have an appreciation for oldies as well. I love Elvis Presley, Buddy Holly, Dolly Parton, and Dolly Parton is not of that oldie genre perhaps, but I have an affinity for that type of music because my father introduced that to us.
Yeah.
So we'd be in
Mhm.
San Antonio, and like I said, as soon as we picked up the frequency of those San Antonio stations, he would change the station to this 50s music. And then, and I don't know if you remember this, we go to the mall or we go to a record store, and he would buy and stock up on on oldies music, on those single LPs. You remember those as well?
Yes, I do.
So he'd stock up on that and bring that
Sure.
back with him to Bronzeville. And so, Dad, if you're
Mhm.
listening, thank you so much for introducing oldies music, and my mom as well, as she listens to music as well from at home, and has been such a instrumental part of my uh, enjoying
Mhm.
different types of music. But we continue, and we talk about how music, and we discussed this earlier, John, it stimulates us, and it takes us back to, you mentioned something about being at
Mhm.
Sonic, and you remember that
And I do
specifically.
remember specific, yes, I
And,
do.
and if you look back, John, and you probably think back,
Mhm.
you can probably remember what you ate, and it takes you
Yes,
back
it
to
does.
those smells. It takes you back
Yes,
to
it
those
does too.
that taste of
Connect to
what you
that
were eating.
nostalgia. Yes, it
Yes.
does. It does.
And so, uh, you know, we look at music and we associate it with these vivid and
Mhm.
emotional connections. I mean, back to high school, back to college, back to when I graduated from college. What were some of the songs that were going on in there? Now,
Mhm.
um, you had mentioned, John,
Mhm.
that your brother is really big into music, and
Yes,
he
he
knows a
is.
lot of tidbits of
Music,
music,
yes, he does.
and the history of music, and that is because, again, we are interested and invest into something that we like. And you've spoken to me about your brother and
Mhm.
his encyclopedic, I think,
Good knowledge, yes, his
knowledge
knowledge
of,
of
of
music, yeah,
music.
sure.
And you said it started when he was very young.
Yeah, he did when he was. Well, I want to say I could, if I had to point to a time, it would probably be those years when we both went to attend Lincoln Junior High. He was 2 years. There's 2 year difference in our ages. I started about '84, and he started about there '86 to about '88. I think, as I remember correctly, and that's where it started early on. And he just was so entranced with. If you remember him, of course, you might remember him from Scooby Doo. You might remember him from Saved by the Bell, even, and probably the America's Top 10. Your friend of mine, Casey Kasem.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's right, Casey Kasem. That's
Man.
correct.
And he had a show called America's Top 10.
On
And
Sundays,
on Saturday
on Saturday afternoons,
And
and
so I really like to listen to it. And of course, the minute we turned it on, we'd see he would have little pictures of all the, like Hall and Oates, and Michael Jackson, and Blondie, and all these guys, and all the favorite artists that we liked. And so he was connecting with that. And in addition to that, well, this music thing just kept going on. And especially was true when he would get connected with America's Top 40. If you remember, he had both two shows, if I think, America's Top 10, which was, I think, again, these afternoons. And then on Sundays from 6 a.m., I believe, to like about 11 or 12, Casey had a whole, like, music time where he would do all of the top 40 hits, and he would do long distance dedications, and he would and all kinds different some he had special guests that he would talk to on top of that. And my brother would just cook in early in the morning. He'd get up.
it started early.
It started early in the morning, and he would just get to the radio, which we had a radio there in his room. He'd turn it on. He'd connect to the station right away, and he'd just listen to it for that whole time, that whole block of time, and he just Wood was totally tuned out. Didn't want to talk to anybody else. Not even breakfast. He was kind of tuned out to the whole thing. He would just listen to it till that time. And I'm like, man, and I could hear his voice, and I could hear Casey Kasem, and like, oh my
Yes.
God, it was like, geez. And that's where he started picking all the encyclopedia knowledge. All these, and for some reason, he liked to gather all these side notes about different artists, and he said about, everybody from Robert Palmer to Madonna, and he said, "Oh, by the way, Madonna's Italian." He said, "What's your real name?" Madonna Ciccone. And he's like, "Oh, wow, that's her last name." And like, wow, I just knew her by just Madonna, but man, she had the last name, and it was interesting too. And he knew all, like, Gordon Matthew Sumner. But I said, "Well, that name's pretty long. We might know him better as Sting."
Oh,
That's
that's
his real
true.
name. His real name is Gordon. And in fact, he joked about it in one of the interviews. He said, I went by Sting by so long that when I finally heard him, he said, is your actual first name in an interview? I said, Gordon? He says, yes, Gordon. But I'm so disconnected to it now. Like, who's this Gordon character? And he'll write like, oh my God, goes by Sting now. He
That's
can't
right.
remember his own name.
Wow.
That's okay, but it happened. It happened.
Yeah.
That's the way it goes sometimes.
we Thank you so much,
Yeah,
John,
no,
again
sure.
for being on the show. Time, as I mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
just goes by so quick
It does, yeah.
when I have such wonderful guests. We're going to go to a music break. And when we come back, John,
Okay.
and I haven't shared this with you,
All right.
when we come back,
Okay.
in my research, I have found out
Okay.
what are considered the top artists within the music industry.
Oh.
And I want to see if you agree.
Okay.
There's a really interesting one that I may not agree with, but we'll share that after the break. You're listening to Library Talk and everything else only on Vaquero Radio, the Valley Student Station. Thank you so much, everyone, for sticking around through the show. And thank you, John, as well, for
My
being
pleasure.
here. And you're welcome to come back anytime,
Oh,
John.
thank you. I appreciate that.
I also want to take this opportunity to thank Ariana at UTRGV Radio and the staff for setting us up and helping us every week. You're doing such a wonderful job. And please, if you like what you've heard, thank you for supporting the show. And if you want to continue supporting not only this show, but all the other ones that are so well produced through UTRGV Radio, you can go to the UTRGV YouTube channel and listen to shows from previous seasons of this show, as well as some of the other ones that are part of the UTRGV Vaquero Radio. So, John, I had mentioned to you that I did not share this with you prior to the show, but I have, according to Rolling Stone magazine's top 100 greatest artists, I have a list of entertainers and artists, and I want to see if you agree with this list. Okay? So, we're going to go from 10 to 1.
Okay.
And we start off with Ray Charles
Sure. Okay.
as number
Cool.
10.
Sure. Okay.
And again, this
Yeah.
is a list of 100, but I only
Makes
chose
sense.
the top
Yeah,
10.
that's good.
Number 10, Ray Charles.
All right.
Number 9, Aretha Franklin.
Okay.
Number 8, Little Richard.
Little Rich. Okay. 50s.
Next is James Brown.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah.
Next is Jimi Hendrix.
Ooh. Yeah.
Next is Chuck Berry.
Oh, of course.
Next is the Rolling Stones.
Stone.
Next is Elvis Presley.
Yeah. Those.
Next is Bob Dylan.
Oh, okay.
And who do you think is number 1?
God. Beatles.
The Beatles are number 1.
Wow.
Now, not to take anything away from these performers, they are icons in their own right.
Of course.
But do you know what number Michael Jackson was out of 100? I'm just gonna
I
ask you,
have
what
no-
number do you think
Oh, what
they
number?
placed
Oh,
Michael
wow.
Jackson on?
That's a tough one, man. I'm gonna say maybe 25,
Number 35.
35.
I was really surprised with Michael
Huh.
Jackson being number 35 on that list.
Wow.
I thought he would have been perhaps
Well, it was
part of the top 10,
Okay.
but
good.
even top 20, but no, not even top 30.
Not even
According to this metric that they used,
really.
again, the Rolling Stone
Wow.
top 100 greatest artists,
Mm-hmm.
they placed Michael Jackson on number 35.
Interesting. You would think. I guess it's very subjective. Well, like I say,
Yes.
and maybe we all have our different. And I know we're kind of pressed for time, and we all have our different ideas about what the top rock goal is. If I'm hearing that, I kind of like would be a little miffed. Someone goes like, "Well, why is Michael Jackson like yourself? Why is Michael Jackson out there? Or for that matter, why aren't is Phil Collins there?
Exactly.
Why Phil Collins? Because he had a lot. He churned out a lot of hits in the '80s
Yes.
too. I remember those, like "Take Me Home" and
Yes.
"Land of Confusion" and "Two Hearts." What happened to all of that? I mean, I don't remember that. Or for that matter, the Carpenters. Why aren't the Carpenters there in the top 10 too? I mean, everybody a different. Again, subjective.
Yes.
Different types of music.
And again, I don't know what they based it on or
Based
what
it on
they,
either.
they use as a metric to gauge that. But yeah, I was really surprised that Michael Jackson was not even in the
Michael
top
was not even
30 of the list. He was number 35.
Oh boy.
I also want to talk about, living in this region,
Yes.
living in this area, we are privy to and we have, Spanish music that is part of our culture and part of us. So I actually also brought a list of famous Mexican singers.
Okay.
And this is a list, of the top famous Mexican singers of all time. And they include Jorge Negrete, Pedro Infante, José Alfredo Jiménez, Lola Beltrán, Vicente Fernández, José José, Juan Gabriel, Gloria Trevi, Luis Miguel, and Selena Quintanilla Perez. I wasn't expecting her to be on the list, but
Mhm.
according to this metric that was used, they are considered a list of the most famous Mexican singers of all time. I honestly regret not ever going to listen to Vicente Fernandez when he came to the Rio Grande Valley. The same thing with Juan Gabriel. I had an
Mhm.
opportunity to go to their concerts. They were up in Hidalgo, and they came several times. And every time I just
Mhm.
they said, "No, that's fine. I'll go to the next one. I'll go to the next one." And unfortunately, they passed on before I had a chance to listen to
Oh,
these
how sad.
icons
Oh,
who I consider icons of Mexican music.
mhm. Oh,
And
I'm sure that was
they
sad.
were
Yeah.
they I
Mhm.
thought
Mhm.
they're going to live forever,
Yeah,
and
we
they still
do.
do.
Yeah,
But
they do.
unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to go to their concert.
Oh,
So,
mhm.
one of the favorite parts of the show for me is when I have a chance to go and talk to people about the show and
Mhm.
ask them if the show question and research question fits. So this week I asked several people, what is your favorite musician or musical group and why? And so here is the list. And again, I'm not going to mention any names. These are people that I know. And one person said Taylor Swift. And they like Taylor Swift because she worked hard and now she has become successful. Another person said Willie Nelson. Willie
Okay.
Nelson,
Yeah,
John.
no, sure.
A legend of country and a founding father of the genre.
Mhm.
Another person said Ed Sheeran because they like their songs and writing.
Right. Mhm.
Another person said Michael Jackson. I've always been a fan of his music, and we
We
started
sure
with
did.
Michael
Sure we did.
Jackson.
Yes.
Another person mentioned Metallica.
Oh, God.
Love working out to their music.
Okay. All right. Of course.
And again, and we talked about this person also, Vicente Fernandez, and all they said was the icon. And so another person said Def Leppard, and they said, let me just get this information here real quick. I'm looking at my notes here. They said that they like music because music is my therapy. I listen to everything, but I always find myself back to the one song that always brings me happiness. So thank you so very much, everybody that participated in this questionnaire. And I just walked around asking people what they thought. And again, John, thank you so
Oh,
very
my
much for being
pleasure.
here.
Pleasure's
As I
ours.
mentioned earlier, you're welcome to come
Yeah.
by any time
Bet.
back to talk about another topic. And I want to thank all of you for supporting the show and for being a part of it as well. I know we stuck to 80s music, and we are going to as part of our last song for the show, we're going to listen to a very successful artist of the 80s as well, Pat Benatar. Hit me with your best shot. Thank you so very much, everybody. You have been listening to Library Talk and everything else, only here on Vaquero Radio, the Valley's student station.